Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Gitto Davis. I'm Head of Policy here at the Environmental Industries Commission, the EIC, and also our sister organisation, the ACE. Looking at the participants list, it's great to see members from both trade associations that are part of the ACE group. I'm very pleased to be chairing today's webinar, brought to you in collaboration with colleagues from IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, and Natural England. You'll see on your screens that I'm also delighted to welcome two of our guest speakers, John Moore, Business and Nature Recovery Lead at IEMA, and Rosie East, Principal Advisor on the Natural Recovery Network. Both Rosie and John will be discussing their work today on the Natural Recovery Network. Before we begin, let me just give you a brief summary of the NRN from the perspective of the EIC. As many of you will know, it's a major commitment in the UK government's 25-year environmental plan, which was enacted by the Environment Act, a key piece of legislation for members of the EIC and the basis for much of our advocacy work as an association. We of course welcome its overarching aim, which is to expand, improve and connect a national network of wildlife rich places across England's towns, cities and countryside, as well as provide a range of economic, social and health and well-being benefits as well. Now we'll hear a bit more about this today, but we all know, don't we, that partnership working is essential to deliver the objectives of the national NRN. Working together across broad range of organisations, and there's a big opportunity for both EIC and ACE to share skills, knowledge and resource, which we will begin doing today. I'll be handing over to our two speakers very shortly, but before I do, let me just run through some housekeeping and the plans for this event. There will be some opportunities for questions. I think there's a message in the chat box for you to ask some questions as we go on. I'll try and get through some of those with both John and Rosie during the event. There'll be a Q&A at the end. If we don't answer all your questions, I'm sure we can try and get you some answers after as well. Before I just introduce John and Rosie to present, what we are going to start off with is a short poll. So there'll be two questions at the beginning and then another one at the end. And the aim of these really is to just get a sense of where we are at the moment, and then hopefully after all the information you've had, you feel that you're in a better place to understand the next steps. So just wonder if we can go to the next slide, please, and just introduce the poll questions.
Sure thing, good. So let me just run down to those quickly. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much. So I think all of you will have had a pop-up on your screen, which is both of these questions. I'll just read them out there for you. The first, we're looking for you to answer if your business is starting to think about its impacts and dependency on nature. So there's some opportunities there. Obviously, we would all hope that you are. The aim, obviously, for us all to be ahead of the game, but feel free to populate your answers there. And then the second question, when you've completed that one, is whether your company currently has a biodiversity and or nature strategy, policy or position and or targets. So yes, no or unsure. So we'll just have a couple of seconds for people to fill those out there, and then hopefully we'll see some of the answers. Perfect. Last 10 seconds, and then I'll ask colleagues to just close the poll so we can see what the answers are like. Okay, so first question then, is your business starting to think about its impacts and dependencies on nature? I think, broadly good news there. Many saying that they are assessing the impacts, some saying that they're ahead of the game, but as possibly expected, a lot of people saying that they're at the start of this journey. And I've certainly found in my time as head of policy at the EIC this issue of nature and biodiversity definitely increasing in terms of priorities up the priority list amongst EIC members. So anything that we can do to support you on that journey with events like this, of course, all help, don't they? And then on the second question, does your company currently have a biodiversity nature strategy, policy position, or targets? Possibly a little bit of a surprise here for me, I think, but fairly split down the middle in terms of some that have and some that haven't. I think that's reflective of the first question. So some may be thinking about setting those targets or policies in place as they start on that journey, and possibly those that have, as they've answered in that first question, that they're starting now to assess the impact and taking questions. Brilliant. Well, thanks for that. Really, really helpful. And thanks to members for just answering those questions. Let's move on then to the main part of the webinar today, and I'll begin by asking John to introduce himself and Rosie when she comes to speak and go through the presentation. John, Rosie, thank you very much for your time and for joining us today.
Thank you, Guto. It's much appreciated. Thanks for the introduction. And just to say hello to our friends, members of the Food and Drink Federation as well, who I know some of you have joined us today. So thank you for giving up your, no doubt, very warm lunchtime to join us today to hear a bit about what we're doing on the Nature Recovery Network. So just a little bit about my role. I'm on secondment to Natural England as Business and Nature Recovery Lead, working closely with my colleagues such as Rosie, primarily to raise awareness and interest of the NRN amongst businesses, and ultimately to encourage investment and some sort of pledge going forward, and to sign up to be a delivery partner, of which we can talk a bit more about that during the webinar today. I'm also leading on some business engagement activities, which I'll be talking about later on, to help shape with businesses like yourselves what an attractive two-way offering would be for, firstly, nature, and secondly, for your business. So Rosie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, John, and hi everybody. Thanks for joining us. So my name's Rosie East. I'm a principal advisor at Natural England, and my role is to look at developing a nature recovery network funding strategy. So obviously the work that John's doing is absolutely critical. We're really keen to work with businesses to understand what the Nature Recovery Network can do for you and to support your targets and policies. I'll be talking a little bit more about what the Nature Recovery Network is and what Natural England does, so hopefully to give you some context, and we can take Q&A at the end. Thanks, John.
Great stuff. Thanks, Rosie. So just a quick run through the agenda today for the next 30 minutes with some Q&A at the end. I'm going to start by really setting the scene. You know, I'm sure lots of you will be aware of the current climate and biodiversity crises that we're currently facing. So I just want to set the scene with what is the problem that we're trying to address here with the Nature Recovery Network. And secondly, why does nature matter to your business? As Rosie then said, she'll then really go into the nuts and bolts of the role Natural England has in this work, and what is the Nature Recovery Network, including a bit about its background and how it will be delivered. I'll then tell you a bit about our recent and proposed business engagement activities and how you can get involved, and what the next steps might look like going forward of this very ambitious national network. And then hopefully that will have stimulated lots of questions. So Guto will then hopefully share, and we can provide some answers to those questions. So just to kick off then, what is the problem that we're trying to address? Some pretty hard-hitting facts. I'm sure some of you will be very aware of this already, but just to set the scene, the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. 1 in 7 species are facing extinction, and more than 40% of species are currently in decline. The UK is ranked in the bottom 10% globally, and the worst amongst G7 nations for the loss of its biodiversity. Now, much of this can be traced back to the Industrial Revolution, and the UK kind of striving to be the first industrialized nation, along with sort of widespread changes in land use through intensive agricultural practices, and not to mention a very high density population, particularly in England, which are all key drivers really for the kind of state of nature that we currently have. Nature is rising up the agenda alongside climate change. And people often talk now about the kind of twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. Last year in November in Glasgow, we had COP26, and later on this year, we have the COP15, which is the kind of equivalent UN biodiversity conference, which has recently actually changed from being in China to being in Montreal, Canada in December. And the outcomes of COP15 will really be a post-2020 global biodiversity framework, which would really help to set the signal of where we need to get to. You know, what targets do we want to set to be really the Paris Agreement for nature? And that's really, really important. So the government has set out its commitments to improve nature within a generation in its 25-year environment plan, which was published in 2018. And the government has committed significant public funding, but recognize that they can't do this by themselves. You know, what we need is a partnership-based whole economy approach across all sectors, you know, all working together in this shared endeavor. So just a few key headlines there. So why does nature matter to business? There's a growing recognition that the natural environment underpins our economy and well-being. The Dasgupta review from last year made it really clear that our economies, livelihoods, and well-being all depend on our most precious asset, which is nature, and the services that nature brings. The World Economic Forum report from last year ranked biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse as one of the top 5 risks to the global world economy. And over 50% of the world GDP is either moderately or highly dependent on nature and its services. Now, no doubt many of you have clients and supply chains that are directly impacted, and you'll be very well aware of this giant risk. So protecting and storing nature is not just the right thing to do, but it makes good business sense. You know, sectors most dependent on nature and its services include construction, agriculture, and food and beverages, you know, of which many of you are directly in this sector. But there's also various impacts across all other sectors, and these can be significant. And your supply chains, clients, and customers are all affected too. The World Economic Forum recommends that businesses should really now be regularly identifying, assessing, and disclosing your nature-related impacts, similar to what's going on in climate now. Now, the UK was the first country in the world to commit to making climate reporting fully mandatory for all businesses by 2025. And it's very likely that in the future, requirements for nature and climate-related financial disclosures are likely to be aligned due to their interdependencies. So this work is now being taken forward by the Task Force for Nature related financial disclosures, the TNFD. And I'd just like to make one small nod to a launch event last week for the British Standard Institute's Natural Capital Accounting Standard, which aims to support organizations to identify their natural capital assets and assess and report on their impacts and actions. And you can find more about this online, and I strongly encourage you to search for this information. So importantly, while the loss of nature poses multiple risks to businesses, moving towards a nature positive business or economy actually offers a lot of benefits and opportunities too. You know, things like increasing business sustainability and resilience, but also improving investor confidence, consumer preference, maybe attracting and retaining a skilled and motivated workforce. And perhaps you can become that go-to business, that business that people see value in going forward. So becoming nature positive, of which there is not one single definition, is good for society and your business. So just to set the scene there. Rosie, over to you.
Thank you, John. So I just wanted to set out a little bit about who Natural England are. and what actually is the Nature Recovery Network, or NRN. So Natural England is the government's official advisor on the natural environment. We also have statutory duties and functions for nature conservation and restoration. Our organisational mission is to build partnerships for nature's recovery, and the Nature Recovery Network is one of our key delivery priorities. So the Nature Recovery Network is a government ambition to create a national network of wildlife-rich sites to restore our critical natural infrastructure. To do this, we need to improve and expand our existing wildlife-rich sites and then connect these across the country, from our countryside to urban areas and to the coast. And this will help us to move beyond protecting isolated areas of nature to restoring nature at scale. And in doing so, help tackle the crises we're facing around biodiversity loss, climate change, and public health. To succeed, we know we need to collaborate with a range of partners to deliver with a shared responsibility. We also need to draw on the range of policy levers and legislative measures. And critically, we need to ensure we are able to effectively direct funding and finance towards this goal. So as John mentioned, the UK is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, and the Nature Recovery Network concept is to achieve long-term, large-scale recovery of nature that delivers for biodiversity, climate, and people. So the Nature Recovery Network, oh, sorry, John, next slide, please. It's a government-backed initiative, and it has developed over the past decade or so, and is supported by a range of policy initiatives. So the underlying principles and drivers were set out in the Lawton Report in 2010, where, in recognition of the urgent need to reverse biodiversity loss and to tackle the effects of climate change, Lawton outlined the need for making spaces for nature bigger, better, and more joined up. The commitment to establish the Nature Recovery Network to meet this goal was laid out in the government's 25-year environment plan, as Gita mentioned. And this plan sets out the government's priorities for leaving the environment in a better state for future generations. And this included a commitment to develop a nature recovery network to complement and connect wildlife-rich sites, which could be designed in a way to bring a wide range of additional benefits around public access, enjoyment, pollination, carbon capture, water quality improvements, and flood management. It also set out targets for halting species decline and establishing an additional 500,000 hectares of wildlife-rich habitat. And two key pieces of legislation have been introduced since then. The Agriculture Act established powers to implement a new agricultural payment system following EU exit that would provide public money for public goods, such as clean air, water, thriving plants and wildlife, and nature-based climate mitigation and adaptation, alongside supporting farming innovation and productivity. The subsequent Environment Act introduced legislation committing to targets for species recovery and introducing a mandatory biodiversity net gain requirement for developments. The government has also made a 30 by 30 pledge, which is part of a global initiative to protect 30% of land and sea by 2030. So all of these commitments and the legislation will contribute to the delivery of the Nature Recovery Network. And it will also help us to deliver against the forthcoming international commitments under the Convention on Biological Diversity, as John mentioned, where we hope at COP15 this year to achieve a Paris Agreement for nature. So the core objectives of the NRN are focused on significantly improving the conditions of our existing protected sites, creating and restoring over 500,000 hectares of new wildlife-rich habitat outside of these sites, and recovering wildlife populations and returning lost species to their natural ranges, so thereby helping to meet the Environment Act species targets on halting and reversing biodiversity loss. And as noted, there's a whole range of additional co-benefits for these objectives, including nature-based solutions for climate change and supporting people's health and well-being through the ecosystem services provided, from clean air and water to the proven mental health benefits of nature and green spaces. So the Nature Recovery Network aims to provide an integrated approach to nature restoration by improving and enhancing our core sites across the country, and then connecting these to other core sites via the establishment of wildlife corridors or stepping stones. And as a large proportion of land in England is farmed, we also need buffer zones of sustainably managed land. And finally, urban, blue and green infrastructure, so like our street trees, parks, rivers and canals, can help us to make those critical connections between urban and rural areas, whilst providing co-benefits for climate and health in areas of high population. So how are we intending to deliver the Nature Recovery Network? We've actually identified three core areas that we're focusing on, and this is spatial planning, strong delivery partnerships, and the integration of policies and funding and finance streams. So spatial planning is about understanding what biodiversity and natural capital is already there, what initiatives are underway, and where we need to prioritise or target activity. And this needs to work at both a national level, but critically at a local level to ensure that local needs and priorities are met. So the main spatial planning tool will be via the local nature recovery strategies, the LNRSs, to give you another acronym. And this is a new mandatory system of spatial planning for nature, which was established under the Environment Act. There are expected to be around 50 county-level LNRSs, and these will be developed by a designated responsible authority in conjunction with local partners. And each LNRS is expected to include a local habitat map, a statement of biodiversity priorities, and it will be a key tool for implementing mandatory biodiversity net gain requirements. And when aggregated, these 50 or so LNRSs will cover the whole country. And where we've got to is 5 pilots were carried out and a public consultation was completed. And so DEFRA is currently developing regulations and statutory guidance to support implementation over the next few years. So in terms of strong delivery partnerships, we know we need to collaborate to deliver the NRN. So we've established a national NRN delivery partnership. And this is made up of organisations from across a range of different sectors, including private businesses, charities, and local and national government bodies. And any organisation willing to commit to nature's recovery can join this partnership. So do contact us if you'd be interested. We'll give you the details at the end. We currently have around 650 partners and we're continuing to grow. And there's no obligations to becoming a partner, but we are encouraging partners to think about what support they could pledge to help us deliver. And this could range from pledging to include land within the network, providing advice, time or expertise, or dedicating financial support or investments. So this broad delivery partnership is overseen by a partnership management group. And this includes representatives from different sectors and government departments. And their responsibility is to provide strategic leadership supported by Natural England. If you want to see more about the specific sectoral reps, you can have a look on our Nature Recovery Network webpage on the Gov UK website. And so the third delivery area, as mentioned, focuses on integration. And this includes both the policy alignments that we've talked through of those various initiatives that will support the Nature Recovery Network. But of critical importance is the integration and alignment of funding and finance streams. So the government has introduced a range of public sector funding streams, such as the Nature for Climate Fund and also the new environmental land management schemes as we transition from the Common Agricultural Policy. However, despite the significant public funding commitments, we do know that there will be a substantial finance gap to meet our ambitions of the 25-year Environment Plan. And this has been estimated in reports to be between 21 to 53 billion over the next 10 years. So we know that private funding and finance will be absolutely critical. And this is one of the reasons the government has set a target of leveraging up to 500 mil per year for nature by 2027 and over £1 billion per year by 2030. So to meet these targets, we know we'll need to find ways to blend public, private and third sector finance. We'll need to build on our existing philanthropic or corporate social responsibility funding. And we'll need to explore and develop new innovative funding models that can lever significant levels of private capital finance. And these could be supported by emerging markets, such as biodiversity net gain, voluntary carbon markets, or nutrient neutrality, amongst others. There are lots of opportunities here, but also lots of challenges. As these markets and ecosystem goods and services, they're still new, they need to be scaled up, and they need to be scaled up with the right infrastructure to ensure high integrity, confidence, and to avoid greenwash. So we're working closely with DEFRA and other agencies and partners to learn from existing pilots and case studies. So just to summarise our key messages, we are facing a biodiversity crisis, and this will impact all of us. Restoring nature is critical to supporting our societies and economy, but successful nature restoration needs to be bigger, better, and more joined up. And this is what the aim of the Nature Recovery Network is. We're focusing on 3 key areas to deliver the ambition, and that's spatial planning at a local and national level, collaborative delivery partnerships, and developing a strategy for sustainable funding or finance. We recognise that the policy landscape is complex as we transition to a new agricultural system, implement new requirements like the LNRS and biodiversity net gain, and also integrate international commitments like 30 by 30. The good news is there's actually a lot of work already underway. This includes 5 large-scale nature recovery projects that Natural England launched in May. We also have the forthcoming environmental land management, landscape recovery pilots, and also a range of fantastic work by partners like the national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty, and environmental NGOs like the RSPB, WWF, Wildlife Trusts, and the National Trust, as well as corporations within our partnership and other partners. So we need to continue our cross-sectoral engagements, and we need to develop a shared language and identify mutual benefits to support collaboration and deliver for nature, climate, and people.
Thanks,
John.
Rosie. Thank you. So, you know, that was a really well articulated run through what the Nature Recovery Network is. And I think businesses, you could maybe see the ambition and some of the challenges there that we have in terms of raising the private capital that's needed to meet these, sort of close the funding gap that's currently there, as well as hopefully a lot of opportunities there for businesses to get involved. So what I just want to talk through for the next 10 minutes or so before we take any questions is some current business engagement activities that I've really been working on and leading since my secondment started last December. So it can really be broken down into 3 phases of business engagement activity in 2022. The first thing, I'm going to come back to you shortly about this, will be a pre-engagement business survey. Now, the survey was really administered and developed to help to understand, or to help Natural England to understand the current awareness and interest in the Nature Recovery Network amongst businesses, what the current appetite is to invest or support in some kind of pledge, as well as understanding what the current barriers and blockers are to support from a sort of business perspective, and in turn what Natural England needs to put into place to break down some of these barriers and to facilitate nature recovery going forward. And also finally, what businesses would find useful from future workshops. The second phase are business webinars similar to the one that we're kind of hosting now, just to continue to raise awareness of what we're doing in Natural England and to reiterate why nature recovery is so important to your business. And finally, something that we're currently developing at the moment with one of our business partners, KPMG, we need to get the messaging right to businesses. We understand that the ambition is there from businesses, but what maybe hasn't been very coherently communicated yet is where are those short-term opportunities to invest? What is the business case for investing in this particular nature recovery network, when there's so many other things out there that businesses could support? So we want to get that right first. And I'm helping hold a workshop later on this summer with DEFRA, Natural England, and a few businesses, just to test a few ideas in terms of getting that strategy right. And what we want to do in future is hold sector-wide roundtables and workshops to really start shaping with businesses what a range of return offerings look like, and how that can firstly support nature recovery, and secondly support some of your business needs and drivers. So in terms of the business survey feedback, it's been really useful so far. We've probably had about 40 to 50 responses so far. Some key takeaways really are the majority of businesses in different sectors see the Nature Recovery Network as a good opportunity to help meet some of your business and project needs and drivers. But for many others, more information is needed first about how the NRN can support your business ambitions, as well as further information on types of pledges, funding mechanisms, and what benefits could be realized from the network. So this is where we currently are now. You know, we understand the why it's important, but what we're working through now is the what and the how, and we want to work with you in terms of shaping that. So it's not too late to complete the survey, and your inputs would be really valuable to really help to inform this work going forward. So I put the survey link into the presentation here, but we'll share this link with you in the kind of follow-up materials. And it'll be wonderful if you could spend sort of 15 to 20 minutes over the next couple of weeks, filling that in for us, that'll be fantastic. So final slide before questions, really. What can you do now? There are many ways to get involved and to start thinking about this work within your own business and within the kind of projects that you're leading and delivering on. So before the kind of secondary legislation and government guidance trickles down for the Environment Act on these local nature recovery strategies that will really set the kind of local spatial prioritizing, as well as BNG coming in towards the end of 2023 and beyond, things that you can do. You can position your business for future requirements. Natural England have produced a really nice blog and brochure to help position your business for future BNG. And it's a kind of high-level short brochure with relevant resources set out to help landowners, developers, and local planning authorities predominantly to get ready for this future work. No doubt some of you have started to think about BNG within your current projects anyway. So those that haven't, this is a really nice resource to get you thinking about it and to start setting up for it. The second thing is the TNFD, the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which I mentioned in the previous slide, currently piloting the second version of the developing framework. So there are businesses out there trialing this right now and piloting this second draft. And the aim is by September 2023 to roll out the TNFD framework that is really practical and usable. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be practical and usable. And you can sign up now to pilot it and to really shape experiences and to share experiences and to really get ahead of the curve in terms of that future reporting that's going to be needed going forward. You can help to ensure within your projects that your carbon and biodiversity offsets plans are really aligned with what we're trying to do within the Nature Recovery Network. And lots of that work will feed down obviously from these spatial plans that we've been talking about. We want you to really start to think about committing and pledging some kind of support for nature's recovery. So within the NRN, start to really think about what you might be able to offer. Is it funding? Is it land? Is it advice and expertise? Is it time? Is it equipment? Certain things that you as a business might be able to support and in turn get benefits back from. So we want to really start talking to you to really start to understand what your business needs and drivers are and to work with you to hopefully develop something really attractive both ways. Tell us what we can do to support your business. What more information do you need to help get over some of those current challenges and blockers to supporting nature recovery, particularly the NRN? One way will be to complete our business survey. And if you're looking for further inspiration, there are resources out there to help. So one of them is the Council for Sustainable Business, their Get Nature Positive campaign, and their handbook for business really lays out a number of actions and case studies written by businesses for businesses on what you could do to start thinking about it or to really get ahead of the curve. And it also includes many signposts to resources too across industry and sectors in terms of getting to know certain things out there. You can also join various nature-focused groups and coalitions. One here is the UK Business and Biodiversity Forum, which I've been working quite closely with too. Now, they are a UK business-to-business hub looking and helping businesses to mainstream biodiversity within their kind of business operations and decision-making. So that'll be one of the really great coalitions to kind of sign up to. But perhaps most importantly, and why we're here today, is to raise your interest in what we're doing. We want you to become delivery partners. As Rosie said, there's no commitment to pledge anything right now, but if you sign up to our mailing list, and that email address there is written out, we can keep you updated with various opportunities and work that's coming online for the NRN, including future business engagement activities such as workshops. And we really want to kind of work with you to really make this a huge success. So I'll leave it there, and happily take any questions that you have. So I'll just pass back to Guto to chair this next session. Thank you.
Well, John, Rosie, thank you both for a fascinating presentation there. Some fantastic slides, and the statistics that you talked through at the very beginning, I think, underpins everything, doesn't it, that you're trying to do. That's the reality of the issue that we're facing, not just a climate emergency, but also a nature emergency as well. Importantly, two biggest issues of our time. We've had some questions that have come in from those that signed up to today's webinar, and there is also opportunity still for those that are on the call to put some questions in the chat. So feel free to keep on doing that. But I thought I would sort of kick off with a bit of a general question first of all, and John, Rosie, possibly you can fight between the two of you as to who answers this. But a very good question from one of our attendees, saying that there are a lot of different organisations carrying out different types of nature restoration projects. How do you see, or how is the NRN trying to fit in to all of that? Because it's a very busy space, isn't it? How are there plans to ensure that the NRN fits in effectively, or is there already work going on?
Rosie, do you want to kick us off, and then I'll jump in? Or?
Yeah, and do jump in. No, thank you. It's such a good point. I mean, the way we see the Nature Recovery Network, and this is the point about partnership really, is that all these nature recovery activities contribute to this concept of the Nature Recovery Network, this national network. So I can understand why it's confusing for organisations to understand which ones to engage with. I think there'll be two elements here. So we talked about the spatial planning. So obviously we want to do that at a national scale. And that's already underway. We're understanding what projects are going on across the country, how we can make sure those projects are engaged with the Nature Recovery Network so that we're all moving in the same direction. And obviously at a local level, a similar approach will be taken through the LNRSs. We have 12 regional teams within Natural England, each with a local area lead, and they're very plugged into local activity. So they're very much feeding into the development of the LNRSs. They have really good understanding of the different projects that are happening on the ground. So we can always signpost organisations if they do want to contact us to our local area team, so they can discuss the projects if that's useful. And it may be news to us. I mean, this is one of the reasons we were so keen to do these engagement activities. We had a big national conference last week, and it was excellent because we were able, we learned things actually we didn't know about projects that are underway. So it's a great question, Geeta, and hopefully in a few years, as we evolve, as the landscape becomes a bit clearer, as we have our LNRSs and our spatial map for the country, we'll understand about how all these things feed in. At the moment, it's all contributing to the big picture, and that's great. So we're just very keen to work in partnership. But John, do you add anything that you think I might have missed?
I thought that was a really, really good summary and great question as well. I think just to make clear, so we're really working in that national partnership team, but there's also those local leads as well, working on the ground with different projects and different organisations, be it businesses or environmental organisations, etc. So we can plug you in. If you've got specific projects or needs within specific areas, we could start plugging you in to start making certain connections with partnerships. Obviously, these spatial strategies haven't been developed yet. They're in the process of, so we can't tell you exactly where there will be local priorities that might be able to meet some of your specific project needs. However, we can start off that process now and tap you into those kind of relevant partnerships.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that answer. The point about sort of collaborative working is really important, isn't it? And I've noticed on the call a few of our members from the Association for Consultancy and Engineering, and so a very big link for that side of the association, particularly between infrastructure or sort of regeneration developments and this point around nature. one or two questions prior to the event around, some of the projects that they're already involved in, where there just isn't the space available within their project footprint to mitigate the impacts and provide that biodiversity enhancement. A real clear ambition to try and get there, but possibly not the space to really deliver it. I wonder, is there a way in which the NRN is trying to support or provide guidance to those type of individuals around how they might offset some of those implications and maybe some biodiversity net gain opportunities? So, any local priorities for the NRN?
Yeah, absolutely. Another great question. Thank you for whoever raised that. So again, we do have these local teams that could provide guidance on where the offsite opportunities are. Now clearly with BNG, what it's trying to achieve is firstly on-site mitigation and biodiversity enhancement within project areas where that can't be provided, offsite opportunities. And then beyond that would obviously be the kind of statutory credit scheme that would come in as well. Now, the government statutory credit scheme would, I believe, be prohibitively expensive to really make that the kind of last resort. There are also kind of private institutions out there that would probably create their own markets for these credits too. I can't speak too much about that work. And if you'd like to know further details about BNG, apart from the kind of brochure that we can share following this webinar, at Natural England, there are a kind of BNG team that could give you some more guidance if there are kind of specific follow-up questions on that. Rosie, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think you've covered that, John. I think one of the challenges with the biodiversity net gain, obviously with the nature projects that are contributing to the nature recovery network, with BNG, you have to demonstrate that additionality. So this is one of the really critical points about the spatial planning elements. We need to know what the baseline is and what these projects are going to achieve, because there has to be something additional. It has to be improving, expanding, to be able to deliver those offsite credits. So as John said, obviously these projects have have potential to contribute, but there are some fundamentals that need to be in place to be able to do that.
Perfect. Okay. Rosie, I think just sort of one further question from me before we maybe move on to the poll. During one of your slides, you sort of gave us the policy context is obviously a very busy policy space in which the NRN is almost trying to work around and join up. So you mentioned the Agriculture Act, the Environment Act, and obviously I know from my own experience development of sort of sustainable land management policies post EU exit. I was wondering how perhaps then the NRN is really going to sort of sit in with all the other government funding policy initiatives, so whether that's government environmental policy, funding policy, or farming funding policy. Now, how is the NRN really going to get to grips with joining some of those dots? Because it feels and sounds to me like it's an integral part of joining the dots amongst this policy space.
Yeah, it's such a great question, Gita. I think, and we often refer to the policy spaghetti at the moment. It can feel a bit like that. So, I mean, the way that we're thinking about the nature recovery network is ideally all those policies, should come together, and the nature recovery network provides that focal point of where we're trying to get to. So you mentioned those different initiatives, and essentially they will all support delivery of the nature recovery network. So whether that's the environmental land management schemes that are supporting sustainably managed land, I referred to in one of my slides about the buffer zones. So obviously we have these core sites, but then we have these really important sites between those. So that's obviously key there. Our specific targets that I mentioned, around over 500,000 hectares of additional wildlife rich habitat, that has a target date of 2042 as part of the 25-year environment plan. So initiatives like 30 by 30 will be milestones on the way to achieving that. So although it seems very complex, there is there is a logic to how they will fit together. And I think one of the key reasons that we're so keen to do this engagement work is to really make sure it is clear to people, because you're right, Gita, I think there's a lot of moving pieces. And one of the things I mentioned at the end, obviously, is the emergence of these ecosystem markets. So, you know, that's another element that we need to take into consideration and work out how it will all fit together. So that is one of my roles as developing a funding strategy, to look at how all these different pieces fit together and how we can make them work. But John, do add anything that you think I've missed?
No, I thought that was a great answer. You know, as you said, Rosie, I think, you know, part of our challenge for the Natural England and DEFRA is to get the strategy and the communications right, because there is a lot going on right now. And that was going to be, you know, as I said, the focus, or part of the focus of this first workshop that we're going to have this summer, to really make it clear, what is the business case? What is happening? Why should you back this horse? You know, why should you invest your money in this particular project, for example? So I think once that's right, the whole policy context become much clearer. But ultimately, it's all working towards the same thing, all about halting and reversing species decline and improving biodiversity. And that's where we're kind of trying to get to with these 30 by 30 pledges and the Nature Recovery Network.
Brilliant. And maybe just one final one, sort of misusing my position as chair here, as maybe declaring an interest living in North Wales. Obviously, this initiative, the NRN, you know, from the Environment Act, is an English piece of legislation. But I was wondering what type of engagement we see, you know, with the devolved nations and sort of the regional combined authorities. Because yes, whilst there is some divergence in policy, that point you make, John, around everybody going towards the same sort of end destination, is there plans to sort of engage with, maybe learn from best practice, but also, I think, share this type of best practice with other devolved administrations that are going through the same process, and will inevitably need to engage with members and individuals that are on this call?
Yes, absolutely right there. So if it wasn't made clear at the beginning, the Nature Recovery Network really is England only. It's focused on England. However, the 30 by 30 government pledges are really for the devolved nations to work through as well. So I'm aware in Scotland and probably Wales, and I'm not sure about Northern Ireland, but certainly Scotland and Wales, there are similar discussions being had, probably slightly further behind where we are now for England. But in Scotland, for example, the work will be taken forward by Nature Scot, who are the Scottish equivalent of Natural England. And they'll be developing things which I believe they were called nature networks, not the Nature Recovery Network, nature networks, to help deliver on their 30 by 30 pledges. And I'm actually speaking to Nature Scot over the next couple of weeks to really tell them about the great work that we're currently doing now within England to help share lessons, etc., across Nature Scot. There's also a working group that's been set up to share lessons, as you said, Guto. And you know, it's really important, I guess, to understand that nature recovery doesn't stop at national borders. You know, it's for the whole UK to really get this right. You know, but there will be some nuances between different countries naturally.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay. Well, I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that we had three poll questions. Participants have already taken part in the first two questions, and I suppose this final one now is maybe a bit of a, now you've heard all about it, what next? So what we're looking for participants to tell us is whether they see the NRN as a potential opportunity to help meet business biodiversity nature strategy commitments and/or targets. So hopefully, I don't think this is any test on John and Rosie, but hopefully the information you have heard has enthused you. So we'll open the poll. We'll give it a couple of seconds just to see what people's thoughts are. Hopefully everybody is saying it's an excellent opportunity. But just to reinforce, whilst we wait for that poll to close, we've recorded today's webinar, and as always with our events at both the EIC and the ACE, we'll be sharing those on our social media channels. So do feel free to rewatch them. And equally, you know, there will, I'm sure, be further questions possibly that come out of this. Maybe people's interest has been piqued. So feel free to reach out to myself or a member of the team here at the EIC. Our contact details are available on our website, and we can certainly get the questions through to John and Rosie and others that might be relevant. So generally very, very positive, I think then. So most saying yes, absolutely. You know, there is a big potential for this to really drive opportunity, but possibly some more information. And I would hazard a guess that possibly some of that information is a little bit more bespoke, isn't it? So maybe answering some questions relevant to maybe the business. And it's great to see a couple there also saying that they're actively engaging. That's exactly what we want. You know, and as many of our participants to be doing that as well. So so fantastic. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for taking part in that poll. So I think given where we are, the only thing that I need to do now is just to thank John and Rosie once again. A fascinating presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to attendees on the webinar. Thank you to all of those that are on the call for actually joining. Maybe we should host more webinars when the weather is 30 degrees or more. People want to stay inside, don't they? So no webinar fatigue. Look, in all seriousness, I know this is going to be a really important topic for everybody over the next coming years. And actually, it's not just an issue that is coming. This is a live issue. Developments are being made now. And with any type of advocacy work, it is definitely better to be influencing policy in its development rather than at the end. So you want to be there on the pitch, not a spectator. So we hope that you found this discussion useful. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good rest of the day, and stay safe in this hot weather. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.